I was recently watching a Munk debate on the topic of political correctness, and in the debate was Jordan Peterson, and one of the questions that he poses in this debate is for the left, the people on the left in this debate, to define when the left has allowed political correctness or liberalism to go too far. Because I don't think it's that hard to find people on the right who will say the alt-right goes too far, or Richard Spencer goes too far, or people in Charlottesville who say the Jews will not replace us, that is too far. But there aren't as many people on the left who are vocal about saying the day of white absence at Evergreen State College was too far, or ridiculing a girl for wearing a Chinese dress to prom was too far, or saying that a white woman being ridiculed for painting Emmett Till was a bit too far. Even within the debate, when Jordan Peterson hypothetically throws out the idea of him paying a white tax for him benefiting from white privilege, they aren't willing to say that that's too far. Michael Dyson in the debate says you're talking great shit right now.
Let's assume for a moment that I've benefited from my white privilege. Okay, so let's assume that. That's fine.
Assumption.
That's what you would say. So, so let's say, here, let's get precise about this, okay?
Was that very individual of you?
Let's get precise about this, okay?
Let's get precise.
To what degree is my present level of attainment or achievement a consequence of my white privilege? And I don't mean sort of. I mean, do you mean 5%? Do you mean 15%? Do you mean 25%? Do you mean 75%? And what do you propose I do about it? How about a tax? How about a tax that's like specialized for me so that I can account for my damn privilege, so that I can stop hearing about it?
Now, when it comes to that question that Jordan posed, when can you precisely define when the left has gone too far, Michael Dyson avoids this entirely, but Michelle Goldberg actually gives an answer, even if it wasn't a good one.
To the question of when the left goes too far, I mean, to me, it's pretty easy. Violence and censorship, right? I'm against violence, and I'm against censorship.
But if violence and censorship is your benchmark, well, separate but equal in the United States wouldn't be violent or censorship. They still had water fountains, they still had areas within restaurants that they could sit. It was just for a specific type of person. So by her own definition, separate but equal wouldn't even be too far for the right. So what I want to do is actually answer this question. When does the left go too far? When precisely has the left crossed a boundary that I think shouldn't be crossed? And the way I want to do this is by starting from the right. I want to start from the right extreme and build all the way to where I think we are today, and then take a look at where the left might be today and where the left could potentially go to establish this precise line of when the left or right goes too far. So if we start from the far right, you can think of somebody like Hitler. This guy viewed people from an almost purely scientific lens. Everybody but Aryans were inferior, and his method to carry this out was by killing anybody who wasn't an Aryan. So that's the extreme right. And if you take it one step more to the left, it's still bad, but you have enslavement. So you could think of enslavement that's occurred in any country throughout the world, throughout history. Still bad, but I think I'd rather be alive and a slave than be dead in Nazi Germany. One more step towards progress, loosely defined here, but you get separate but equal. So you allow the oppressed to integrate into society, but you're still distinguishing them in some way, hence separate but equal. So they're equal, but they have their own bathrooms, their own seating area, their own water fountains. They're equal, but not really. And then you take this one step even further, and I think you get to kind of where we are today. You know, you have hate speech, you have private forms of discrimination. You have a Christian baker who discriminates against gay people when they want a cake for their gay wedding. Racism still exists, but it isn't enforced by the government. It's racist people being racist. It's people calling me a chink or a gook, which I would prefer that they didn't, but I don't think they should be thrown in jail. So while I don't think it should be criminalized, I think it's one of those things that's kind of policed by the people. If I'm having a discussion with somebody and they call me a chink or a gook, I think we've pretty much stopped any sort of progress that we can have with that discussion because of the name calling that's derived entirely on my race. So that's where we're at today on the right side. But what does the left side look like? I think we're already kind of at the left's equivalent of hate speech today, or private forms of racism or discrimination. You have things like mansplaining or race or gender cards. You know, You will have a conversation with somebody, and rather than calling them a chink or a gook, you're instead saying, well, you're a straight white man. You're taking their race, you're taking their sexual orientation, you're taking their gender and using it against them, just like the right does with racial epithets. So just like the right, you're discounting people based on their gender, race, or sexual orientation just for a different reason. Take that one step further for the left, and I think you get their version of separate but equal. You have safe spaces, you have separate teams at work for underrepresented minorities, which actually does exist at tech companies. There are teams that are specifically for minorities within tech. You get policies like affirmative action, you get diversity and inclusion initiatives, so you're separate, but you're still wanting to be perceived as an equal. So these groups are literally separated from others, sometimes based entirely on race, gender, sexual orientation, but the expectation is that everybody still views them as equals, even though you're separating them from everybody else. On the left side, I think this is where we're at today. We no longer have separate but equal on the right, but we do kind of have it in certain forms or in certain areas on the left. Take this one step further on the left, and you're now approaching the slavery side of the left. We've already addressed slavery on the right, but what does slavery on the left look like? Well, instead of lowering the bar for minorities to boost numbers in college admissions, why not just cap the amount of white and Asian men who are allowed to pursue STEM degrees in the first place? Workshops for learning about inclusive language and affirming belongingness and, removing yourself of implicit racial biases right now are kind of excluded to private companies in smaller forms like Starbucks. But what happens when this becomes a part of our public education system? I think this is a realistic probability if the left continues on their current trajectory without defining exactly how far is too far. Gender and sexual politics already have some people saying that if a parent isn't giving their child hormones, a 5-year-old child who says they're actually a boy instead of a girl, that if the parents aren't giving the child their hormones, that the state should actually come and take their kid away because this is child abuse. We're slowly creeping towards their version of slavery. And finally, we have Hitler. What is their version of Hitler on the left? What are their methods, and exactly how far away from that are we? So to answer Jordan's question, I think that the tolerable range, or the too far for the left, is once you get past the hate speech. Once you get past the mansplaining or the gender cards or the race cards. Just like on the right, I think once you get past racial epithets or private forms of discrimination, I think we've gone too far. Separate but equal on both sides is too far. Whether it's separate but equal water fountains and restaurants, or separate but equal teams for certain races or certain minorities, I think either side, right or left, separate but equal is too far. So to me, the tolerable range is whenever you're just in that area, right or left, where people are just saying things you'd rather them not say. When they're throwing out gender or race cards, when they're accusing you of mansplaining, or on the right, when they're discounting your opinion because of your race and calling you names like nigger, chink, or gook. All of those I would rather not have, but I think it's tolerable. It hasn't gone too far. But the second you go to separate but equal, where it's institutionalized at some sort of government level, whether that be separate but equal water fountains or affirmative action in college admissions, I think both sides, right or left, have gone too far. So let me know what you think. When has the left gone too far? And likewise on the right, when does the right go too far? What is your tolerable range of behavior that you think is acceptable, even if it's not necessarily desirable? Feel free to leave a comment below with your thoughts. I'm interested to hear what you have to say. And if you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to the channel to stay up to date on my latest videos. Thanks.